Hi, and welcome to week 2. Today's video is going to be mainly walking you through some of the activities that you're doing in week 2. It's a really reading heavy week. You're reading sections from your textbook, The Wayne Writer. You are reading an online chapter from a textbook, and the chapter is called Finding Your Way In, that gives you a bunch of rhetorical strategies for getting through heavier texts. And then you're also reading an article that's linked in this week's activities called Backpacks versus Briefcases. That's going to introduce you to the purpose of rhetorical analysis. Rhetorical analysis is the reading and learning strategy that you're going to be using in Project 1. So with these various chapters and texts to read this week, there's a lot of material to get through, and I want to explain sort of the purpose of why we're spending this week reading and learning strategies, and then next week we'll start talking about how to apply those. I won't usually walk you through all the to-dos for each week because you'll see those activities listed in the week's folder, but I want to get you used to the process that you should work through for the week. So it'd be a good idea at the beginning of the week to go into your folder. Here we're going into the week 2 activities. And remember to look at the list of tasks, and I have them laid out, suggested deadlines for Wednesday and Friday. Sometimes there will be firm deadlines for peer response here, and then firm deadlines for Sunday activities. Your first task for this week is to read the Project 1 description. That's to get you ready for the writing that we'll start getting into next week. This week's class is all about learning some reading strategies and some analysis strategies. So again, like I said earlier in the video, it's going to be a reading heavy week. So first task, read the project description. If you haven't looked at it yet, our project descriptions are lengthy, but there's a lot of good information in them. So you want to become quite familiar with how they're laid out and how to read and review it. The beginning part of it, the introduction or rationale, explains the purpose, some of the background behind the assignment. And in this one, I've included why I've selected the 4 texts that you're going to pick from for this week. And I'll talk a little bit more about this line of inquiry next week when we start practicing analysis. The assignment prompt section then lays out how to go about writing the project. This first assignment is very prescriptive, meaning we've given you an outline for it to help you make sure that you construct the analysis so that your discussion of the text that you're looking at will be as thorough and convincing as possible. Next, you'll see the learning outcomes that you're working to meet through doing this assignment, the minimum requirements that you need to meet for writing this assignment, and finally, how the assignment will be evaluated, and we'll talk about that a little bit the week that we look at drafts. So I'm going to jump back into the week 2 folder, And like I mentioned, you're going to read chapter 6 from the Wayne Writer about different types of arguments. You're going to read this text, Finding Your Way In, which gives you different reading strategies. Then you're going to apply those reading strategies to this text, Backpacks and Briefcases. Reading this text and applying a strategy from here to this text is going to help you compose Blog 2. Let's take a quick look at the Blog 2 directions. When you look in Blog 2, this is a reminder of what I just went through. You're going to review for this document and apply one or more of the strategies described in this document to your reading of the article Backpacks and Briefcases. So let's click there. That is still not showing the right link. I'll fix that. In the tool. Okay. Going to go to Finding Your Way In, Invention as Inquiry-Based Learning in First Year Writing. And there's a nice introduction of how this chapter is set up, but I just want to give you a preview of what I mean by reading strategies. Lesner and Craig discuss several reading strategies like reading rhetorically, and they explain why you might use this reading strategy, and then they give you examples of how to read that way. Asking rhetorical questions, as a reading strategy, free writing as a reading strategy. So I would say that this Lester and Craig text is not a text that you're going to read from beginning to end, word for word, but this is one that you're going to kind of read a little bit and skim a little bit to figure out which strategy you might want to apply. Then you're going to go back and apply this to the text backpacks and briefcases that's linked in the week's activities, and that again is going to talk you through rhetorical analysis. In your writing for the blog, I want you to summarize backpacks and briefcases. I'd also like you to explain what reading strategy you used and upload a picture or image of the notes you took using that reading strategy. So what I mean by that is if you can on a phone or via somehow through your computer, or if you can scan in the notes or a page of your annotations or a page from your notebook, that would be awesome. You don't need to show me all of the notes if it's on several pages, but one image would be really good. And the reason I'm asking you for that is so that when you and I talk about the reading strategies that you're using, and when you reflect on which strategies were effective and which maybe weren't as effective, we've got that image or that picture as a sort of artifact that can help guide our discussion. I'm going to go quickly back to the weekly activities and the week 2 folder. Hopefully, by the end of this week, you get a little bit more facility with bouncing around Blackboard and figuring out where everything is. The last thing that you have to do this week is complete another reading quiz on Chapter 6 in Backpacks and Briefcases, and that's in here. So I definitely suggest following these guidelines. The next thing that I want to talk you through are just how this whole week is coming together. And I'm going to frame this quick discussion with a set of questions. The reason that I'm using questions to pose this discussion is that I want us to get used to thinking about the idea of asking questions, as that's going to become really important as we head into Project 2, the iSearch, and as we go throughout the semester and you figure out, like, what do I really need to know about writing? What do I need to understand about rhetoric? How do I figure out how to ask the right kinds of questions? So this quick discussion is what tools will help me write a rhetorical analysis. Again, this is the week that we're kind of gathering tools, we're gathering materials and figuring out how to work through this process. So the first task that you need to practice is reading a text for comprehension. Looking at a text like Backpacks and Briefcases that you'll look at this week and figuring out what is an author's argument or what's their main idea and how does she or he explain that argument. What are the other points that they bring up to help talk through that idea? So reading for comprehension, a first kind of step. We're also going to be learning the tools for analysis. What are the various types of argument? That's going to be what Chapter 6 in the Wayne Writer is going to help you with. How are these arguments organized? Again, in the Wayne Writer, there are suggested outlines for each of the types of arguments, and so you can kind of figure out using those and starting to look at example texts how authors piece together their ideas. But it's not just about having an idea, making an argument, but also persuading readers to really buy into those arguments. And so we're going to talk about how authors use persuasive appeals, logos, pathos, and ethos in their arguments. If those terms are unfamiliar to you, Backpacks and Briefcases and a quick internet search will help you kind of break down what those things mean, and I'll show you what to look for in a second. We'll talk a lot more about it in week 3. Finally, if you've read a text for comprehension, you've got some rhetorical analysis tools in your back pocket. Now you need to apply those tools to the text. How does the claim, the author's argument, sometimes you might think about this as a thesis statement, show me what kind of argument is being laid out? So how does that one sentence give me a hint into what kind of argument this is going to be? How does the author support his or her argument and organize the piece of writing? So what kinds of evidence are used? How is this whole text, built, and structured. Finally, how does this author use rhetorical appeals to persuade the readers? And not just how do they use rhetorical appeals, but are these tools effective? And to what degree do you think they are or are not effective? So again, a bunch of reading to do this week, probably a lot of notes to take, but this is going to get us prepared for looking at specific texts for Project 1 and starting to work through that analysis next week in week 3.